Well, this morning, we are kicking off our second week of this year-long project we're doing, where we are just crazy enough to read and teach through the entire Bible in 365 days. Which, by the way, how's that going for you guys who've been doing the readings every day? Is that going okay so far? You keeping up and not totally lost yet? Okay, good. If you haven't joined us for that yet, it's not too late. We will update you every time we start a new book. Exodus is coming, I think, a week from tomorrow. So if you're like, oh, I'm just so behind, don't give up. Start again with Exodus. We'll catch up with videos. We'll do whatever we can. But stick with us because there is so much you can learn from the Bible as a whole, as you get the whole story. And there's so many cool little things that you never hear about in pop culture until you read it for yourself. In fact, I was thinking about the first time I ever read through the Bible in a year, or tried it at least. I think I made it when I was 17. And it was so weird to me because the deeper I got into Genesis, I found these people who were like imperfect. I went into the Bible thinking, okay, everyone it's going to highlight is going to be this example of shining holiness that I'm supposed to imitate. And then I come to Noah, and there's the ark story. I'm like, oh, that was cool. And then he gets drunk and like lays there naked, and his kids are like, this isn't cool. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And they go a little further. You read about Abraham, and he like kind of doesn't trust God enough and lies, flat out lies about who his wife is, sort of. And then he's like, well, she is technically my sister. If you read that, you saw it. And I'm like, it's okay to lie? I thought lying wasn't okay. Then you read about Lot. Yeah. And it's like, none of that can be okay. And you just keep going, and it's like, what is going on? And what I didn't understand was the Bible is not a book of perfect people. The only perfect guy in there is Jesus and God. It's a book of people like you and me that God uses anyway. It's a book of imperfect, flawed people with limits who make really bad mistakes sometimes. And it's there to teach us a lot about our relationship with God. The other thing I had to learn was the Bible doesn't condone everything it records. Some people go, well, there's slavery in the Bible. Yeah, but does the Bible ever say, hey, slavery's good, you should do it? It doesn't condone everything it records. We'll get there in a few weeks if you're wondering. But today, Genesis 26, we're looking at this guy, Isaac, who definitely did not have life altogether. And we're going to see just how messy life can be for them, just like it is for us. But if you haven't been reading with us, let me catch up real quick. All you've missed is 1 week. Basically, God created everything. That's pretty awesome, including the first two people. And right away, the devil shows up and tempts them to disobey God for the first time ever. And they do. And that brings death and all these problems into the world. Everything you see in the world, you go, what is wrong with the world? Genesis chapter 3 is where it started. People disobeyed God, and that's what happened. But even right there, God goes, all right, I'm going to fix this someday. I'm going to send a Messiah. He's going to save the world. He's going to make everything right, and it's going to happen. I'm not going to leave you like this. I'm going to fix this. So some time goes by. You got the Noah flood story and the Tower of Babel, which is kind of cool. And then out of everyone on earth, God picks this guy named Abraham. It says, I'm going to do this whole Messiah awesome project through your family. And Abraham's like, me? I'm old. I don't have any kids. This ain't going to work. And God goes, okay. And so he gives Abraham and his wife Sarah a miracle baby named Isaac. And that's who we're going to read about as an adult now. And so God is creating this people group. He's like, I'm going to give you a special land. I'm going to make you into a nation. And someday I'm going to bless the whole world through your family with this Savior I'm going to send. Awesome stuff. So we're kind of in the very beginning of that plan that God set in motion here. And Abraham's son Isaac is now an adult. And Genesis 26, check this out. And by the way, if you have ever had a day that started good, went bad, went better, went bad, went better, you're like, whew, that's over. And then something happened right before bed. And you're like, why can't a day not be messy? This chapter is for you. If you've ever had problems with your kids, problems with your job, problems with people talking bad about you, this chapter is for you. Because Isaac goes through all that in one chapter. And I love it because it reminds us life isn't always clear cut. Life is messy, right? In fact, that's today's title. If you're taking notes and you want a title, here it is. Today's title is, what do you do when life is messy? When everything doesn't wrap up in a nice little bow like it does on TV in 30 minutes, What do you do when life is messy? Let's check it out. Genesis 26, starting in verse 1, says this. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine in Abraham's time. In other words, there was an extreme shortage of food, right, in the land where Isaac lived. And it was so extreme, he couldn't just sit there and be like, it's all good, I got a bunker with food. No, he and his family had to do something. They couldn't stay there. They had to move. They had to do something. So like Abraham did a few chapters ago, he decides, I'll go down to Egypt. Egypt is like a big deal place. They got plenty of food. I'll go hang out with them. And so he heads toward Egypt, taking this route that goes through this place called Gerar. But when he gets to Gerar, God says, wait, stay here. Don't go down to Egypt. Stay right here. Check it out. So there's a famine in the land, and Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, don't go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I'll be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I'll give them all these lands, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed. That Messiah, right? Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commands, my decrees, and my instructions. Verse 6, 4 little words that are huge. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. Why is that huge? Because understand what God's asking Isaac to do. It's not just like, well, instead of going there, go here. No. To stay there means he's staying there as an alien. I mean, not like, little green man, but like someone who doesn't belong. Someone who has no legal rights there. Someone who would be completely dependent on the other people that live there if they were going to make it. And if you know people, you know that can be a scary place to be. Because what if they decide they don't like me? What if they're not there for me? What if they flake on helping me? Scary, scary stuff. You're sunk if no one helps you, if you stay in Gerar. But God says, no, stay here and don't you worry. You stay here. I know it's tempting to keep going. I want you to stay put for a while. And don't worry. I promise I'll take care of you. I'll be with you. I'll bless you. I got this. It'll be okay. Stay here. So Isaac goes, okay. And realize that took some serious faith on his part to just stay. Which brings us to the first lesson I think we can learn from Genesis 26. When life gets tough, obey God. Whatever he tells you to do. Sometimes it might be stay, sometimes it might be go. For Abraham, a few chapters ago, God said, don't stay, go. I want you to go to this other land. But whatever the case, when life gets tough, don't freak out. When life gets tough, don't try to figure it out yourself. Go to the Bible. What does God say to do about the situation you're in? Right? Even if what he says is scary and doesn't make sense from a human standpoint. In fact, that's actually like one way to know you're hearing God correctly if you don't know that. Here's like, you ever wonder, how do I know when it's God or it's just my thoughts? How do I know when it's God or Satan trying to trick me? Here are some tips from a pastor named Charles Stanley that have been proven so true over and over again. You can see them all in this passage, okay? When it's God's voice talking, first of all, it will always be consistent with what he's already said in the Bible. Right? You see that with Isaac. God goes, you stay here, because this is where I told Abraham I'm going to give him the land. What God said before, God doesn't change. He doesn't bait and switch you. It's always consistent with what God said before in the Bible. Number 2, it'll often go against human wisdom. Well, all of my friends, everyone in the world says I should do this, and I feel like I should do that. Is that weird? No, it's probably God. It's very rare, if ever, that God and the world are on the same page. Usually his thing is go the opposite direction, because the world is headed in a bad direction. Number 3, it'll clash with our sinful, selfish nature. It'll usually be the opposite of what you would naturally want to do, okay? What would gratify you, that kind of thing. God's like, if it's something that would gratify you selfishly, probably not God, right? If it's something that clashes with that, probably God. Number 4, it'll usually challenge your faith, because God wants to grow your faith. He doesn't want you to be some comfortable little Christian wimp. He's like, I want to grow your faith and make you bigger and stronger. So usually when God tells you to do something, it'll challenge your faith. And then number 5, it just may call for an act of courage on your part too, as we see with Isaac. Isaac chooses to say, okay, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to stay put when human wisdom and his sinful nature and the easy way all would have said, no, go to Egypt. It's so much easier, so much more comfortable. He goes, no, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to stay here. It might be harder, but I'm going to stay. So obviously, since Isaac did the right thing, that means everything's going to go great for him, right? Everything's instantly going to be awesome. Yeah, that's not how it works. Things go better when we obey God than if we had disobeyed him. But it doesn't mean smooth sailing, comfortable, easy life. God never promises us that this side of heaven, as he discovers right away. Verse 7, so he obeys God, he stays put. But then, when the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, she's my sister. Like father, like son, right? If you've been following along. What is with you guys? Anyway, because he was afraid to say she's my wife, because he thought the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah because she's beautiful. When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, who may or may not be the same Abimelech Abraham met with a few chapters ago. He'd be pretty old, so it might be his son, but either way. He looked down from a window, saw Isaac caressing his wife, Rebekah. So he summoned Isaac and said, "She's really your wife. What is with you, Abraham people? Your family does this to me all the time. Why do you say she is my sister?" Isaac answered, "Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her." Then Abimelech said, "What is this you've done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech gave orders to all his people, "Anyone who harms this man or his wife will surely be put to death." I just can't help but wonder if Abimelech's like, "What? Your family always does this to us. Why do you do this?" But that leads us to lesson number 2, right? Because it was something that he did. When life is scary, trust God, like Isaac didn't. Because, back in verse 6, it's like, "Go, Isaac!" He obeyed God. He stayed put. Yeah. Then comes verse 7, and he instantly gets scared and loses all his faith and tries to do it himself. Ever been there? It's like, "Woo, I had this awesome obey God moment." And then 5 minutes later, you do the dumbest thing that shows you don't trust him at all. And you're like, "What is with me?" Isaac knows what that's like, right? Right after doing the right thing, he gets scared anyway. Right after God tells him, "I'll take care of you," he goes, "All right." And then he gets scared. "I don't think God's going to take care of me, so I better do this myself," right? Makes a little mess. And I don't know about you, but I've been there plenty of times. So thank you, God, for chapter 26, that I'm not the only one. So let's see what God does with that. Verse 12. "And the Lord spoke to Isaac and said, 'How could you do something so dumb and so soon after doing something so right? What is with you, man? Why couldn't you trust me? I just told you could trust me.' And the Lord smote Isaac where he stood and started over." No, it doesn't say that, does it? Verse 12. "Isaac planted crops in that land, and the same year reaped 100-fold." Right? I plant 1 carrot, I get 100 back for every seed. Wow. "Because the Lord blessed him. The man became rich, and his wealth continued to grow till he became very wealthy." So wait a minute. So Isaac totally blew it. Didn't trust God at all, and God blessed him for that? No. What God did was kept his promise, because here is lesson number 3. Remember that when you are faithless, God is still faithful, because he can't deny himself. Paul, that's almost word for word a verse out of one of Paul's letters to Timothy, actually. 2 Timothy 2:13, if you wanted to look it up later. But man, we can blow it biggest ever, and it's not like God's like, forget you. It's like, no, I'll still keep my promise to you. You broke yours to me, but I'll keep mine to you. And keep moving forward here. Praise God for that principle, because I need that I don't know how many times a day. God blessed Isaac because God is so patient with us, and he still has a plan for us. And even when we totally are faithless in his ability to carry it out, he goes, "I'm still doing it anyway." Doesn't depend on you. Depends on me, and I don't change. Even if you blow it right after you get it right. Though again, that doesn't mean no struggle, right? Verse 14. "Isaac had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug at the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with earth." Very mature, obviously, right? It's like you need wells for water. You need wells to keep your animals alive. Like, well, we don't like this guy, so we'll close up his wells. That's mature. And so wrong. But it's apparently a sign to the king that, okay, maybe I can't protect this guy like I thought I could. So verse 16, Abimelech says to Isaac, "You better move away from us. You've become too powerful for us." Which, if it were me right there, I'd have to go with some prayer. I'm like, God told me to stay here. God said to stay here. People are telling me to move. What is this, God? You said to stay here. Now I can't stay here. What do I do now? So what Isaac does, he just goes, okay, well, I'll stay in the area. I don't want to disobey God, but I can't stay. So look at this. Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Basically, he's like, okay, I can't stay in Gerar. Well, here's the border, so I'll go doo-doo-doo and stop right there, right outside the border. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died. And he gave them the same names his father had given them. Why would you name a well? Well, back then, that was a way of saying I own it. Okay, so just like if you name your dog. I name this dog because I own this dog. If you name a well, that means I have property rights over this well. Okay, but the harassment continues, verse 19. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered another well, right, of fresh water there. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek, because they disputed with him. And as the footnote there says, Esek means dispute. By the way, when you're reading through the Bible, always read footnotes. Otherwise, it will clear up so much for you because you'll be reading along with something like this. He named it Esek because there was a dispute. And you'll be like, huh? If you read the footnote, it'll say Esek means dispute. Oh, so he named the well. Let's call this Dispute Well because that's what happened here, right? So always read footnotes, always. Then they dug another well, verse 21, but they quarreled over that one too. So he named it Sitna, which, footnote, anyone? What's that mean? What's it mean? Huh? Oh, no, opposition. Good try. Actually, look at it. Opposition. Should be a little note on the bottom if you get out your magnifying glass. Verse 22, he moved on from there. Another one coming. Get your footnotes ready. And dug another well, and no one quarreled over that one. Whew. So he named it Rehoboth, saying, now the Lord has given us room and will flourish in the land. Because Rehoboth means, anyone? Room. Very good. Nailed it. Good job. All right. Yeah, always read your footnotes. It will clear up so much when you're reading and you're confused. Which brings us to lesson number 4. When life is hostile, stick with God. When people are picking on you and they're unfair and it's like, God, what is going on? People are harassing me. Don't give up. God says don't give up. He says, I promised you stuff over and over through the Bible, cover to cover. It's constantly, even right here, it's encouraging us. You persevere. God's people are not wimps, okay? God's people persevere. They get stronger through struggle. Don't you give up. When life is hostile, keep going with God. I didn't put it on the screen, but I love how the apostle, or Jesus' half-brother, the early church leader James, starts his letter in the New Testament. He goes, first thing he says, consider it pure joy when you face trials, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And if we'll let perseverance finish its work, it'll make us mature and complete, not lacking anything. Don't whip out and go, it's too hard, God. I don't want to do this anymore. When things get tough. If God's called you to do something, stick with it till it's done. That's how you get stronger. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym and pick up a weight, it's too heavy. Well, you're never going to get buff, okay? You're never going to look like The Rock or whatever. It's not going to happen. If you take a nap eating Twinkies because that's easier, no, it's as you struggle and strain that you build muscle. Same thing spiritually. God goes, you keep going. You don't give up. You stay put, you don't give up, I'll take care of you. Struggle isn't bad if your ultimate goal is one God gave you and you respond to the struggle well. I'll say that again. Struggle isn't bad if the goal you're after is from God and you respond to the struggle well. So go Isaac. He's back on the happy side, right? Go Isaac. Oh, he blew it. Oh, go Isaac again. Okay, verse 23. And look at this. There, after going through some trials and danger, God reassures Isaac of his protection and reaffirms his promise. Because God is awesome like that. Verse 23. From there, Isaac went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I'll bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. By the way, when you see Lord in all caps in the Old Testament, that is actually God's name, Yahweh. But out of respect, they don't write Yahweh, they write Lord. But as you read on in the Bible, it makes more sense that way because when they encounter these other gods that people worship, when you see Lord in all caps, they're specifically saying that God, right? So like when they're in Egypt, it's like, your gods aren't real. Yahweh is real. Because, if you go up, well, the Lord is real. Well, to Kyle or to Mr. Egypt, the Lord might be Ra. So why would they just say Lord? They didn't. They had a name for him. So every time you see Lord in all caps, it's addressing God by name, saying, no, this is the Hebrew God. We're talking about a specific God. It's not just God that anyone can, be a part of. No, God, Yahweh, is who we're talking about. So another fun fact for you there. So check it out, though. Lesson number 5. When God reassures you of his promises and his plan for your life, which the more you read the Bible, the more time you spend with him, you'll see that kind of stuff. You'll be having like a horrible day, and it'll just so happen that the reading for that day has some verse that jumps out at you and encourages you and reminds you, God's going, hey, I got this. I'm still with you. I got a plan. Don't give up. When God does that, when life is blessed in any way like that, don't forget to thank God. Don't forget to do what Isaac did, built an altar. What was the point of the altar? It's a way of showing gratitude. He's saying, oh man, God is so awesome. Here's my way of showing gratitude. Because living a life of gratitude really does make all the difference in life. We talked about that a few weeks ago at Thanksgiving. Live a life of gratitude every day. Take time. Thank God for what he has done, what he is doing, what he will do, even if you can't see it. Seek to have a grateful heart. Verse 26. Look at this. Meanwhile, Abimelech had come to him from Gerar. with Ahuzath, his personal advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his forces. Isaac asked them, what is this? Why have you come to me, since you were hostile to me and you sent me away? They answered, well, we saw clearly that Yahweh was with you, and we're kind of scared of him. So we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us, right? Between us and you. So let's make a treaty with you that you will do us no harm, just as we didn't harm you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully. And it's like, did you live in the same place I did? That's right. And now you are blessed by the Lord. It almost sounds like he's trying to take credit for it, doesn't it? He's like, we treated you well, we sent you away, and look how blessed you are. It's like, seriously, dude? But verse 30, Isaac responds like God would have us. He goes, Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men swore an oath to each other. Then Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. That day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. They said, we found water. He called it Sheba, and to this day the name of the town has been Beersheba. All right, lesson 6, and here's an important one. What do you do with guys like Abimelech? Well, when life is tense, be a peacemaker. God calls us to be peacemakers when it's possible, as far as it depends on you. We talked about that a few weeks ago, too, with Jesus as our Prince of Peace. It's online if you want to catch the whole version. But, God doesn't want us to be conflict causers. You look at Noah. We were just reading in the Bible. What happened with Noah? He gets drunk. He does something stupid. One son walks in and goes, oh, look at this. He goes, hey, guys, you won't believe what Dad did. The other two go, oh, that's not cool. And they protect his honor. And who gets blessed? The ones that caused conflict? And we're like, look at this stupid guy. No. Noah goes, hey, that's not cool. Your whole family's like cursed now. The two that sought to protect their dad's honor were the ones that were blessed. And when someone does something stupid, don't point it out and gossip about it. Try to protect their honor. Be a peacemaker. Do what God would do. He made peace with us when we didn't deserve it. Be a peacemaker. As far as it depends on you, when possible, you never compromise on things God said to do, but there's a lot of possibility for peacemaking that we don't take advantage of. As difficult as it can be a peacemaker, especially when it comes to your own family at times, right? Look at the next part here. So Isaac's had this day. I was like, it's awesome, it's terrible, it's awesome, it's terrible, it's awesome, it's middle. And then he ends the chapter like this, verse 34. When Isaac and Rebekah's son Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Okay, don't raise your hands, but just think, have you ever in your life, you parents, ever had a moment where your kids made a decision that was a source of grief to you? We won't make eye contact. Isaac has too, right? But you know what he did? As you'll see, if you're doing the Bible readings and you read the next 2 chapters today that are part of today's reading, you know what he did? He navigated it as best he could while keeping his eyes on God. He wasn't perfect, but there's the next one. Man, when choices your kids make grieve you, just do your best. And keep your eyes on God. Try to respond like he would have you respond. Respond like he does to us. Isaac didn't navigate family issues perfectly by any means, as you will definitely see in the next 2 chapters. He did the best he could. But you know what's cool? Here's a spoiler warning if you're reading through the whole Bible. In the end, God's plan still wins anyway. God works it all out his way. And even uses some of the family issues to move things in the direction God wants it to. So I guess the overall lesson for us today goes like this. When life is messy, stay focused on God. Notice when life is messy, not if life is messy, because it's gonna be messy. If chapter 26 shows me anything, it's that life is messy when you're a real person in the real world, right? It doesn't always flow like a movie does or a TV show where it has this perfect beginning and then just a little struggle that's just enough you can overcome, and then it wraps up in an hour or 2 with this like happy little ending, and it's like, oh, I'm so satisfied. Man, I wish life was like that because I'm a very organized person and I don't like the messy craziness, right? But that's not how it works. Like Isaac, you may start your day with a crisis to which you respond perfectly, and then shortly thereafter do one of the stupidest things you've ever done, right? Which then runs its course with consequences. And then that's followed by something awesome that happens, but that makes other people jealous, and then they start causing you trouble, and that causes stress and struggle, and you eventually overcome it, and you feel kind of good about how everything's settled, only to come home and find out your kids, turned on the blender without the lid on, and now your kitchen's a mess, and they're like crying over here, and the cat's over there, and you don't even know what's happening, right? And that's where today's chapter ends. Whether you want it to or not. Life is messy. But Just like Genesis 26 says, life is messy, it also reminds us through all the mess, through the ups and the downs, when you get it right and when you fail miserably, praise God, he doesn't abandon us. He's still there for us. And if you keep your focus on him, man, through all the messiness, you may even end up with your own story that God goes, hey, that's a story worth telling. But it wasn't perfect, Lord. Yeah, neither was Isaac's. And yet God said, print it. That's good Bible, right? Maybe we'll even end up with our own story God says is worth telling like he did. Let's pray together. Father, thank you so much for all you have done for us, all that you are doing right now that we don't even know about it. Sometimes it's like watching a play where you're preparing the next scene off stage and things don't look good in front of us, but what's coming is going to be awesome. Or what's coming is going to be difficult, but you'll help us through it. So thank you for all you will do through the messiness of life. Thank you that you don't abandon us through the messiness of life and through our mistakes. Please forgive us for the times that we haven't viewed life like you call us to, though. When we've compartmentalized you, where we go, okay, well, church is God time, and maybe my daily Bible reading is God time, but when I'm out there in the real world with real people being mean to me, oh, I got to figure that out. God, forgive us when we've done that. Help us remember you're everywhere. Help us have an awareness of your presence through it all. To remind us, Christmas, we just celebrated, shows us you're not afraid of the messy parts of life. You'll send your son to be born in a dirty, ugly, funky stable to save us. You're not afraid of the messiness of life. Thank you. Help us stay aware of that. Help us remember to cling to you, to pray. In Jesus' awesome name, amen.